Today, we're going to be doing a big dick, no bullshit review of the game Lost Ark. 4 years ago, when I was made aware of this game via a YouTube trailer, it was being heralded by the online community as the next big, quote-unquote, Diablo killer. That kind of already sorted itself out. You get the idea. At the time, I was a massive Diablo fan, and there's a lot of hype behind this game. And being the hardcore skeptic I am, I said, nah, this just looks like a bunch of cinematic bullshit. Yeah, it looks cool and everything, but I bet you the gameplay is going to be trash. And boy, was I wrong. Ish. We'll get to that part later. Anyway, after hacker-manning my way into the Korean servers using VPNs and borrowed account information, I've been playing the living shit out of the game for the last 2 to 3 weeks. And I feel like I am almost uniquely qualified compared to some of these other reviews that are going around the game because they basically leveled to 10 and then stopped, and then they're making the reviews. No, okay, I've been testing the game out properly, not just getting on and playing for like 10 seconds, okay? So I am going to give you a no bullshit review. And we're going to get right into the nitty-gritty details of this. Lost Ark is an isometric, massively multiplayer online action role-playing game made by the Korean company Smilegate. Think Diablo meets WoW. Sprinkle some big old anime titties and some waifus on top. Then get some Monster Hunter, throw that in there. Just get some Sea of Thieves. Smash it all together. Yeah, it sounds weird. Because it fucking is. It's super fucking weird. But in a good way, I think. So the way I'm going to do this is we're going to break down the game into 5 different categories, and I'm going to give you the pros and cons for each category. Pros. Pro number 1, I thought I'd just add this one in here real quick. It's not on a mobile phone. On a more serious note, I'm just going to go ahead and trigger a bunch of people right off the bat, and I'm going to say it. Compared to the other isometric games currently available, and the ones that I've played, the graphics of this game are in another league. Okay, I'm talking they are extremely modern graphics. I'm not necessarily saying that the art style I completely agree with. I'm just saying if you zoom in on the characters, look at the level of detail. You zoom in on the environment, you look at the environment, or if you zoom out and look at the environment, it doesn't matter how you look at it. The graphics of this game are the most modern, and they just look stunning. It's probably carries the game to a certain extent in the way that some of the vistas, like you just sit back and you're like, wow, this game, just like I have not played a game that looks this good in a long time. And I kept finding myself saying that when I was doing my first playthrough, and I was just pog champing constantly, and it was all not the cinematics, because this game doesn't even do cinematics. This game, while you're playing, just zooms out and just shows you like 1,000 mobs all in engine having a big ass fight, and meanwhile you're running around just slaying dudes. It just looks the best. And honestly, if this is, I'm going to use these as examples and references quite a lot. This is PoE and Diablo. This is Lost Ark in terms of graphics. It's just on another level. Another pro, or at least I think it's mostly a pro, is the insane diversity in the environments. And I say it's mostly a pro is because, like Diablo kind of sticks, for example, to a theme, whereas this game is like, it's a multicolored ice cream. It has everything. You start off in a kind of a medieval area with castles and shit. You end up fighting pirates. Then you take your ship over to a fucking fairyland where you literally shrink and you're chilling out with fairies and lollies. You know what a lolly is? I don't want to go into it. Then you know what? Let's just go to hell, and we're actually in some sort of hellscape where demons are trying to kill us. And then, it's going to take my boat, getting a bit lazy, take my boat over, go to a bikini island, chill out on a bikini island. Maybe if I want to go out and have a party, go to an EDM island and actually just go, take some E and start raving it up. The one thing I did notice was there was no, all the crazy diversity with all the islands. I was kind of looking for some sort of African island, because every single island I went to was just white people. And I think that's got something to do with the Korean design philosophy. I would be cool if they added in like an Africa type area. To be fair, they have continents that I haven't actually explored yet, they haven't unlocked yet, and it'd be cool if that was Africa. Another big pro would be character customization. Once you've picked your like real manly dude or your waifu of choice, your different class, you can then go in and you can start messing around with stuff. You can try on different outfits initially to see kind of like what the armor sets will look like depending on what you've picked. You know, you can even use emotes to see what what the hell they look like. You can choose between different presets. This is like presets that they've used, and you can whatever, go like an emo elf or whatever, some sort of weird old young chick. There's lots of different presets, but in my opinion, the best way to do it is to go full custom, baby, full custom. Okay, they allow you to change everything from different eye types, different face types. You got like a bunch of different face types you can pick. I mean, you can even go full manual mode. I'm not even kidding, full manual mode, and just make your own face. You can go fucking huge eyes, massive eyes. It looks kind of creepy with massive eyes. You can go like fetal alcohol syndrome and have your eyes super spaced, close together, however you want. Super high, super low. Sideways eyes. I mean, shit, dude. You can really get some fucking weird faces going on here. Once you've got your face of choice, you can then go between the different hairstyles. And now they allow you to pick between, lots of different hairstyles. You can go different hair colors, whatever hair color you want. You can even tint the hair, which I think is really, really cool. So, let me just unfuck my character here. You can just really kind of make some really awesome hairstyles. My personal favorite would be the golden. Oh shit! If you go to, I don't know how to do it. It's the golden tint, guys. You want to turn this motherflopper down, turn that one up. You can get some really, really cool looking hair. Let me just tell you that now. You can change even the pupils of your eyes. I guess you guys probably don't care about this too much, but you get the idea, right? And makeup. Don't even get me started on the makeup. Oh, mate. Oh, and mate, do you know what? Actually, my favorite setting, I've got to show you this one. Eyebrows. Eyebrow tints. You can do your own eyebrow tints. Because myself, I have quite thick, luscious eyebrows myself. So being able to customize your eyebrows to your liking, definite plus. The last pro, but definitely not the least, would be the fact that the game is R18, and it's got something that Diablo Immortal's not going to have, and that is gore. Whether or not you're just ripping the guts out of a fucking demon, or cutting off the head of some dude, or you're just fucking hammering a baby turtle to death. You can just straight up explode things, eviscerate things, lacerate things. They definitely have some really unique ways of destroying enemies' corpses. It's great. Honestly, it's good. It creates a really satisfying feel when you pop your massive cooldown and whatever in front of you is just obliterated into just shreds of meat. Now let's get on to the cons. Probably the most controversial con, I'll just get it out of the way right away, and that will be the art style. Because a lot of people will say, this isn't even a con, baby rage. But then there'll be a ton of, real K-Kona guys that are going to agree with me, and a lot of people that actually aren't a huge fan of this kind of art style. And that is like the anime kind of overkill art style where the guys are running around with fucking swords 5 times the size of their character. The girls literally don't even run practically. I mean, if you look at the Arcana character, the Summoner character, and the Bard, okay, the way they stand and the way they run is like they face their feet inwards and they kind of they prance. They kind of prance around. They're trying to like dodge an attack that's going to fucking eviscerate them and rip them in half, but they're prancing around like some sort of spurg to look all cute and shit with their all big old titties with their fucking titty physics fucking bouncing around, and I think that can trigger a lot of people. I myself, playing Battlemaster and Infighter, they actually get like a really kind of alpha dominant waifu. I don't know what you want to call it, like kind of like a Chi-Chi out of Dragon Ball Z. It's like a real alpha fucking waifu. They don't run stupid, and they're thick as fuck, and you can. But basically, what I'm trying to say is, it's a Korean kind of anime art style, and a lot of people won't like it just because they'll just get triggered by the art style. But it is something you can overlook if you like the game enough. Another con that people keep talking about is the fact that you are gender locked based on your class. So if you want to play a healer, you have to be the pansy looking girl that runs weird. If you want to be a berserker guy, you have to be the super alpha male that's like 3 times the size of anyone else. If you play a Hawkeye, you got to be a little emo dude. You do not have a choice, so you were just straight up gender locked. I personally don't mind that too much because I like to play waifus in games that I play anyway. But I mean, if it forced me to play a guy when I wanted to play like a big old titty girl, then I could see why people can get mad. So yeah, definitely a con. You are gender locked. You do not have a choice. You are forced into the gender based on the class that you choose. Another con, and you have to take this with a grain of salt because it is open beta, but it is a soft release open beta, which means they're not resetting characters or anything. The game is out. Is the massive drought in terms of transmog. There's basically only like 3 to 5 sets that you see people running around in game, right? Everyone looks very similar in terms of the transmog they're wearing. Yeah, the characters look different and everything, but transmogs really similar. They do have a full cosmetic thing where you can change the way you look without changing the gear that you actually have equipped. They have a shop where you can buy different mogs, but right now it's only one unique mog per class, so it's pretty pathetic. But clearly they have got systems in there to support it, and I assume they are going to add more mog in as time goes on. But right now, just a massive lack of mog. How am I supposed to have a mean slut mog and like stand out from the crowd when everyone's in a slut mog? My biggest con is probably visual pollution. And what I mean by that is that, you know, because of the anime art style, everyone has like kind of overkill looking abilities. So the second you go into like a 4-man group and you have all the animations on and everyone's doing ridiculous shit, you can't really see the boss mechanics that well because there's just fireballs and shit flying everywhere and you don't know if it's a thing that you're supposed to stand in or a thing that you're supposed to run away from, because there's just like stuff going everywhere. There is an option where you can turn off other players' effects, but the second you do that, then you disable the ability to see some effects that you want to know are happening, like when a bard puts down a healing circle or something, and now you can no longer see it because you've got the thing disabled. Or the second you go into PvP, you want to see 1v1, you want to see what the other people are using, but you've got it turned off, so now you can't see the mechanics, so you have to turn it back on again, and then you go into a raid, and then you have to turn it off again. And I would just like to see them have some sort of smart pollution thing where, like in Diablo, for example, when you group with a witch doctor, the pet doctor's pets become extremely transparent and they're very hard to see. So you'd think that there could be some sort of automatic thing, like when there's 30 players on the screen, or 50 players, God forbid, because there are times when, you're doing 50-man world boss and there's just shit everywhere. It just would tone it way down and turn off things automatically. Start off with the pros. Probably one of the biggest pros, and that a lot of people are going to like because people like to save money, is that it is free to play. You can just create an account, and then boom, you are good to go. There's no monthly subscription. There's no initial cost. It is free to play. Now, bear in mind, there is a store, and I am going to go into that in the cons in a bit here, but otherwise, it is free to play, boys. This is probably one of the biggest pros for a lot of people, and that's the fact that there's currently 12 classes in the game, and soon to be 18 classes. They're not all super similar or anything. They're all pretty fucking unique. I'll go over the ones that are currently in the game because I've played every single one of them, and I'll give you a quick little description. You've got the warriors, starting off with the berserker. He's like this big dude who fucking has a giant-ass sword that slashes guys down. Not too dissimilar to like like an arms warrior out of World of Warcraft, just on roids. You've got like a destroyer, which is another kind of warrior type character that has a huge ass axe, specializes in lots of stuns, slow attacks, and huge AoEs. You've got a warlord, which is a guy with a giant gun lance and a huge ass shield, and he's kind of like a tank / specialist that creates shields for your party at opportune moments. You've got the mages, starting off with the Arcana, and she's a chick who throws cards at people. Like literal playing cards. Kind of think of Kaiba out of Yu-Gi-Oh! How he throws cards at people's eyes and shit. Kind of like that, except she has like card blade storms. She can like summon a bunch of cards under people, throw them up in the air, slam them into the ground, slam them into the wall, etc. Summon a giant card prism and just rip people to shreds. You've got a summoner who can summon like with an ultimate, a gigantic skeleton king, and it just comes in and one-shots everyone. It can summon little ice dudes that freeze people. Can summon a big-ass worm out of the ground that crushes people, etc. It's kind of like a witch doctor, but there's kind of 3 pets that you use. You've got a bard, which is the closest thing that comes to a healer in this game. Because you got to remember, it's not like World of Warcraft in the fact that you have like a tank and a healer and a DPS. It's like you can have if you want to, you can have a healer, but it's not necessarily mandatory. But it's really good to have a bard, honestly. Like, if you're making a group, you kind of want a bard. It makes everything easier. She creates a ton of shields for people at opportune moments. She can heal people on a very long cooldown, and she can debuff the mobs and slow them down and stun them and stuff. Like, a lot of utility. And then you got the fighters. They're the best, by the way. The fighters, which are effectively monks. You've got the Battle Master, which is kind of like a Diablo 3 monk in a way. A monk that specializes in kicks and fast attacks and long combos of punches and things. You've got the Infighter. It's like a monk with gigantic fist weapons. She kind of like jumps up in the air real high and comes down and slams people, punches the ground, does big AoEs. She has like double dash. She can dash around really fast. It's a really, really cool class. Probably my favorite. My personal favorite would probably be Infighter. And then you've got Soul Master, which to be honest I think is a lot of people's personal favorites. And that's because of the fact that she can do Spirit Bomb out of Dragon Ball Z. Literally, she can do Spirit Bomb out. She can summon a Spirit Bomb out of Dragon Ball Z and chuck a gigantic ass, huge ass ball on people that does mega damage, and it takes ages to charge up. Totally unpractical, really hard to get off, but it's epic when you do. She can also do Kamehameha, shoot out Kai Blasts. It's kind of like a ranged monk. It's really fucking sick. You then got the Gunners, which you've got Hawkeye, which is effectively like a emo Hanzo. You can literally shoot out a giant dragon with your bow and arrow. It's like an emo Hanzo, honestly. That's pretty much the best description I can give. Devil Hunter. They might as well just call it Demon Hunter because that's what it fucking is. It's like a Demon Hunter out of Diablo 3, except you have, you can switch between 3 weapons. So you can go like shotgun mode, rifle mode, and then dual wield mode. And then you got Blaster. It's kind of like Bastion. Your ultimate is you turn into Bastion. You set up a giant turret and you just start blasting the fuck out of stuff. And the rest of the time you have like a huge ass gun that you're carrying around. It's massive, and you shoot out rockets and shit. Now, the other classes that I haven't played that aren't out right now are the Assassins, which is Shaman King, Pirate, and Shadow. I have no idea about them. No one really does. You can kind of speculate based off their names. And then you've got the Specialists, which are astrologers, musicians, and alchemists. No clue what the hell they're going to be like. But to be honest, Shaman King, if they make an elemental-based melee character, that makes me moist. Another huge pro in this game would be the abilities, and just the straight-up number of abilities you have to choose from. Each specialization has up to, and not limited to, 20 abilities. 20 for each spec individually. And these abilities can be leveled up to 10. You cannot level all of them up to 10. You have to make a choice as to what you want to do. If you want to do PvP spec, PvE spec, leveling spec, whatever, you have to decide on a spec, and you can level these abilities up. And as they go up, at level 4, you unlock a set of 3 runes, which you can then pick between, which will all give you different bonuses or benefits. And then at level 7, you unlock another set of 3 runes, and at level 10, you master the ability, and you unlock another set. And you can imagine you've got 9 different runes, and you can only pick 3, so you've got a lot of different combinations. And these runes aren't all just passive increases to the ability, or like reduce resource costs, etc. Some of them will fundamentally change the ability. Like, it'll change it from like a big AoE to a frontal cone line attack, or it'll make you jump 10 yards, then do an attack. Or it'll change it down from a combo-based ability, which you have to like double or triple tap, to ability that you hold down, charge up, and then unleash, etc., etc., which is a really fucking cool system. And they've actually done a really good job in creating specific niches for these abilities. For example, on my Infighter, I have a spec that heavily prioritizes stuns, because you want, on boss fights, you want a ton of stuns, because getting the boss knocked down allows your whole group to just deep dick the shit out of the boss, and you've got all these abilities that specialize in stunning. For PvP, you want heavy mobility and stuns, so you've got all these niche abilities that only 3 to 5% of people are using, but all the PvPers are using it, right? And then for, doing general purpose PvE, you want lots of AoE damage, fast, instant attacks. You've got abilities that you can specialize for doing that. Now let's talk scale. This game has a way of making you feel tiny in comparison to the size of the world. Now, see, I look at this as a pro, where some people might think that's a con, but it really makes it feel like an MMO because of the way that you kind of get around. The map itself is massive, right? You open up the map, there's 6 continents, there's hundreds of little fucking islands everywhere. It's crazy. But that's not necessarily that makes the creates a feeling of a massive world. It's a way that you travel around. It's the whole boating system. Okay, so once you do your first continent and you do the main quest line, you eventually unlock a boat, which you hop into, and it kind of zooms out the camera and creates this kind of really kind of miniaturized look. So everything, like the whole city you were just in, like you can see it to the left of you and it's quite small. And you can see whereas you're traveling, you're traveling quite fast in comparison to the city, but you're actually moving kind of slow in the boat. Anyway, you travel around on this boat, and everywhere you look, there's islands to your left, islands to your right. Every single one of these islands has whole quest chains associated with them, which allow you to unlock the island heart, which is another endgame mechanic, which we might talk about later. But as you travel around, you realize, holy crap, this map is huge. I've only done one continent. I haven't even done a single island. What's even happening? And it kind of creates this. You have this realization that wow, this is a fucking MMO, man. This is not just some small little sandbox ARPG like fucking Diablo 3 style. I mean, if you were to compare the scale of Diablo 3 to the scale of Lost Ark, I mean, I want to say it's like 50 times the size, 60 times the size of Diablo in comparison. At least it feels that way anyway. But to me, that creates this kind of sense of I want to go everywhere and do everything and try out all the theme parks. I want to do it all. I want to find out like what kind of weird shit can I find around here. I went to one of the islands for a quest, and it was just a straight up rave island where a bunch of dudes were having a fucking rave, which was just like insane to me, right? Insane to me. Like to think that you've got all these different islands with all these different storylines, and you have to unlock every single heart. It's going to take like months, right? Months and months to do them all. Not that I'm saying you'd want to, because some of the quests are kind of questionable, but you get the idea. It does create the feeling of it being a world, not just like a small little sandbox which everyone's confined into. So now you might say, because this is such a massive world, you're never going to see any other players out there. That's wrong, because they've actually got a really fucking good sharding system involved. Every single island or area has like a cap of players that can fit into that cap. So when you go to some remote island, you're going to be forced onto the main server of that island until you get to the point where you hit the cap, and then a second shard will be created. And what this does is it creates a MMO experience, right, where you just got this players running around. Even if you go to a remote island, yeah, you're not going to see as many players there, but you're still going to see someone else or another couple people running around doing some shit. Or if you're in a super populated area, like a main city, there's going to be like 20 different shards of all different players. The difference between this and like WoW or something is the fact that you can choose which shard you go to, so you can meet up with your mates. There's no issues. Like if you want to go raid an island or meet up and do some shit, like go questing together, you'd be like, yo, everyone go to shard 7, and then you'll just go bam, 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 bam. And if it's full, you can actually do a force join feature where you force join into your mate shard. There is limitations to this. I tried to exploit it to cheese a quest, and eventually it gets to a point where you actually have too many players in a shard, and it doesn't matter, you can't force join in. That's to stop people from exploiting. But overall, I like it over the WoW sharding system because of the fact that you actually have a choice, and you can actually see what channel or shard you're on. Another huge pro is this place that I call the Bifrost. Effectively, you play your musical instrument and you get teleported into space, and there's a big old titty angel chick which you can talk to. And she teleports you to kind of like a hyperbolic time chamber type thing out of Dragon Ball Z, where you can spec into whatever abilities you want. You can summon bosses, small mobs, big mobs, dummies which trying to move around, which can be knocked back, or you can summon like scarecrow type dummies, which are kind of like the attack dummies out of World of Warcraft. It's basically a playground or a sandbox in which you can test whatever the fuck you want to test. Gear, skills, enchants, whatever. You've got an area to test things, which is significantly better than I've seen in any ARPG, right? I've never seen that. Like, in Diablo 3, we'd have to go to Act 1 and test on zombies, and the zombies would keep dying, and it was really annoying. This game here, no, you can just teleport to the big old titty angel chick, the Bifrost, and go to the hyperbolic time chamber and test your shit. Another huge pro would be the dynamic floor layouts that this game has. They have the floors kind of layered at different levels of depth, and you can kind of go between them by pressing a special action key, which is G, and your character will like hop on a zip line, fucking fly down, and you're in a new zone, or you have to jump a cliff, or jump a gap, or you can hop onto a platform, which kind of like moves and connects you to another part of the platform. It's really kind of insane. I've never seen it in any ARPG to date. where they do it quite like this. And it kind of looked gimmicky when I first saw it, but then I realized, wow, this is actually really cool. And I totally wouldn't mind this shit being in my other games that I play. It's a really good new idea that I haven't seen before. I don't know if they've copied it from somewhere else. Feel free to let me know in the comments below, but the dynamic floor layouts in this game are actually really, really sick. Another really good feature is the default class dash key. This is something I've been asking for in Diablo for a long-ass time, where like you're basically forced into playing these builds where you drop the utility of moving for something else like survivability or more damage because you want to push the highest GR possible. If you have no choice and every single class gets a spacebar key which you can press where your character has some sort of gap closer or thing to get out of a mechanic, you don't encounter that issue. And they've actually given every single dash flavor. For example, my Infighter has a double dash where I can dash once on a 5-second cooldown or dash 2 times consecutively for a 10-second cooldown. The Warlord, which is the big tank guy, he doesn't dash forward, he jumps backwards, not quite as far and not quite as fast. The Berserker, he does like a kind of combat roll type deal. They all cancel whatever animation you're currently doing, and it's all client-side, so the second you press spacebar, it like instantly happens without any lag. Now, you can get hit by a mechanic. You can rubber band if you lag back into the mechanic, but generally speaking, it works very well. Now, let's talk about the game engine. This thing impressed me so many times. It was displaying hundreds of enemies on the screen at the same time. And it's not like cinematic. They're literally hundreds of enemies, hundreds of units simultaneously on my screen, moving around, doing stuff at the same time. And I just don't know how that's possible without getting massive FPS lag, without getting massive server lag, because like in Diablo, if you attack like 20 mobs at the same time, you know, the game just starts lagging and crashing. The server just locks up. In this game here, like 50 units will run up to you, all in a perfect, like stacked, huge, dense, fashion. And you're like, there's no way I'm going to be able to attack these mobs, right? The cutscene ends, and then you just leap into a giant pack of 50 fucking mobs and just start mowing them all down, which is just insanely impressive to me, and it keeps blowing my mind every time that would happen. Like, just this just sheer amount of density they could have on the screen without causing server lag or game lag. Speaking of lag, let's talk about the netcode for this game. Now, this isn't a pro nor is it a con. It's somewhere in between. Now, you don't really know where to put it. So I'm playing from New Zealand, right? And the servers are in Korea. So I'm at about 200 ms. And generally speaking, the gameplay feels really good, really reactive. You press stuff client side, it happens straight away on your screen, and the server lines it all up. Generally speaking, bosses in this game, if you're playing the hard mode, difficult ones, and you're pushing content really hard, a lot of the mechanics will just straight up one-shot you from full HP. So most of the time, like 95% of the time, I would dodge a mechanic and it wouldn't hit me. But the other 5%, I would just dodge a mechanic. I'm talking about a fraction of a second, right? Because there's like 0.5 reaction times in this game, where you've got like a tiny amount of time to react. You do it, and then your character just rubber bands and gets killed. People have been praising the shit out of the netcode, and I would say, generally speaking, for PvE, it's pretty fucking good. Like, you could easily play this game at 200 ms and PvE. But for PvP, if you're playing at like 200 ms and the other guy's playing at 10 ms, and you're both playing the exact same class, using the exact same ability, and you're flying towards him, he's flying towards you, 9 times out of 10, that guy's going to knock you back, and your ability will not register as being a hit, which is complete bullshit, and then you get put into a stun lock, and you get fucking farmed. It's time to get the elephant out of the room, and let's move on to cons. And let's answer the question, is this game pay to win? Short answer, no, it's not pay to win, it's pay for an advantage. Long answer is, it totally depends on what your definition of pay to win is. If you think World of Warcraft is pay to win, i.e. buying gold with money is pay to win, then you're going to think this game is pay to win. If you literally cannot play WoW because of that fact, then I would not suggest playing this game, because you can definitely do that. You can just fucking swipe that credit card, buy some gold to then trade to other players. It's kind of funny, to be fair, it's probably less effective than WoW. And the fact that you cannot buy NPC gold. There's 2 types of gold. There's player gold, and then it's NPC gold, what's called shillings. You can't pay to win the NPC stuff. You can only pay to win the stuff that you would trade other players for. So if someone has some sick potions they crafted and you want to buy those pots off them, you could use that gold, the pay to win gold, to trade them for the pots. You can use the pay to win gold to fucking buy some food off them, just like you can do in World of Warcraft to maybe a lesser extent. But there are other things you can buy off the shop, like you buying an extra ticket to go into a dungeon. So instead of being able to do 3 dungeons a day, which drop really good loot, you could do 4. Okay? But, big but, you can actually in-game do a daily quest, which allows you to do 4 dungeons, right? Via in-game means. It just requires you to spend an extra 20 minutes doing that quest to get the extra ticket, whereas the other guy could just fucking pay a little bit of money and get the extra ticket instantly, right? So it's one of those things where, you know, it's paying for an advantage, but it's not paying to win, because you can do everything via in-game means. You can actually reverse, kind of like in World of Warcraft, how you can change gold into a WoW token to get Blizzard currency. You can do the exact same thing. You can change your gold into fucking gems, which is the currency for the shop, and then you can buy whatever shop item you wanted with these gems. So it's like, you can get everything you need to get via in-game means, but if you do pay, you are going to gain an advantage. Hopefully that gives you a quick little breakdown of the shop system. Honestly, I would have to make a whole video to fully explain it. In my opinion, I think most Western folks wouldn't care when it comes to the shop in its current state. Now, that is subject to change because companies have been known to get greedy and then just fuck their game in the ass. So hopefully that doesn't happen. Now let's talk about something different. Let's talk about the long animation times on abilities. I personally am not a fan of pressing a button and then just letting go of my keyboard for the next 3.5 seconds. Because that happens with a lot of abilities in this game. They have some crazy animation times. Not all of them. There are some abilities which are like, you know, you press it and it's executed like almost instantly, which I love. I love those. I like the fast animation abilities because you press it and then it hits the boss. You don't press it and then the boss moves and then you're sitting there like going, attacking the air and doing nothing. Now, you can make the argument that you just need to get good. You fucking spurg. Just get good and don't press your abilities when the boss moves, which is definitely a valid argument. Just like it's a valid argument to say putting lots of things on the global cooldown in World of Warcraft was a good change because, you know, you have to think about what GCDs you press before you press them. Fuck that. I like reactive gameplay. I don't like pressing a button and then locking my shit in place for the next fucking 4 seconds. Sometimes it does feel really satisfying, though, I will admit. For example, the Infighter has its ultimate ability. You press V and you press it a second time, your character flies up in the air. And he goes, wah! And then comes down with like 2 dragons as fists and just annihilates whatever's in front of him. And when it lands, it's extremely satisfying. I just think there's too many abilities in this game that are on too long animation times. Now let's talk about something that actually fucking infuriates me. I honestly don't understand how they managed to fuck it up this bad. How the slip through Q&A is beyond me. And that is the pathing in Lost Ark. If you don't know what pathing is, basically, when you click somewhere in an isometric game where you want to go, just click to move, your character will just run in a line to that point, right? That's pathing. Occasionally, like, they will add in a little bit of AI to the pathing. You know, if you click to a spot, but there's like a mob in the way, it'll kind of slightly deviate to go around the mob, right? To get to the point that you've clicked. Okay, in this game, it has got a full-on AI. It has got, you've got 250 IQ pathing, and it honestly ruins the game. In the respect that if you're on a bridge up top and you're walking along this bridge and you by mistake, as you're clicking along the bridge, it's a narrow bridge, and you by mistake just off the side of the bridge and it counts as below, your character will instantly do a 190-degree turn and it'll walk all the way around for the next 2 minutes, go down all the staircases, avoid every obstacle, and you'll eventually end up on that exact spot that you've clicked. Whereas a normal game with not the 250 IQ, it would just try and run to that point on the bridge, and then it would just hit the edge of the bridge and stop, right? It would just be like, ugh. In a raid encounter, or you're trying to avoid a mechanic, say you were fighting a boss and you were trying to get behind a boss, and you would have clicked behind the boss, but, you know, just slightly inside the wall, your character would just run to the edge of the wall and then stop. Not in Lost Ark. Because of the fucking pathing, if you click behind the boss, but slightly in a wall or slightly too far to the right of the boss, and the hitbox is blocking you from just getting behind it, your character will then proceed to, instead of just walk to the edge of the wall and stop and take the shortest route, it'll take a long route and it'll run directly in front of all the frontal cones, all the one-shot mechanics, all the fire, and you will die. Splat, dude, because this is a very punishing game. You will just fucking die. Okay, and you might be like, well, that's just a get good issue, man. The amount of times I've called it, I've been like, oh my god, this pathing is completely fucked. watch this, someone's going to die. And then 2 seconds later, 2 of the Korean people in my group, Koreans with 0 ping, who are like really good at computer games, who are playing the game 16 hours a day, just walked directly in front of the boss and fucking committed suicide because of the pathing. And then they spam Korean and they get translated and they're saying pathing. It's not just me. It's a straight up issue with the game, and the pathing is terrible. And the fact is, they've made the pathing too smart. It's like NPC level AI pathing. They need to dumb it down. It just needs to go as far in a straight line to the point that you've clicked, and then if there's an obstacle, it just hits the obstacle. Not it fucking goes to Narnia and back just to get 1 meter closer to where you've clicked. Another issue that's added a little bit of salt to the wound of pathing is the fact that the big mob hitboxes, you're just directly hard up against the mob, and you press your button, and then your character just somehow misses. And it's only on the really, really big bosses. Somehow your character just, like, you press your Q button, which is supposed to make you fly 5 yards up and then, hit a mob. But if you're in melee, it'll, like, instantly hit. Okay, instead, it just kind of flies through the boss. And it's happened with a few of the abilities on multiple different characters. And I've heard people complaining about this as well. It's just, like, some sort of issue with big mob hitboxes. Another thing is also questionable boss AI. It's the bosses that are less scripted, I guess you could say, where it's not like a rotation of mechanics that you have to avoid. It's more so the ones that are like more of an NPC style boss, which kind of moves around and you can kind of has threat on you and it's trying to chase you and stuff. They seem to always just end up at a wall. Because of the fact that you do more damage if you're behind a boss, you're always constantly going behind the boss. On top of that, it's always less dangerous behind the boss. 9 times out of 10. There are some bosses that have like dangerous tail mechanics type thing. And what happens is the boss seems to just always end up at a wall, and then it's kind of awkward and kind of clunky, and it's just sitting there for a few minutes until it eventually does some charge or like teleports out or something. I call it questionable boss AI, and I'm just not a huge fan of that. I feel like they could definitely work on that. In terms of design philosophy, when it comes to itemization in this game, they've taken the stance of an MMO much more than an ARPG. What I mean by that is the items that you get in this game are pretty much mainly just stat sticks. There are some very rare items that do have special effects, and there are set bonuses that do slightly different things. It's not like you equip an item and it completely changes the way your character plays. It's much more, you equip an item and yeah, you might get a proc that gives you more haste, or you might get a proc that makes you run faster every now and then, but it's not completely game-changing based on how you've geared your character. It doesn't feel like an ARPG in terms of gearing. And now I'm just going to rattle these off because the video is getting insanely long. There's no choice in races. There's no races. That's a con. There's no passive talents. There are lots of things that kind of close to passive talents, but no, there's no just passive talent system in this game. The guild capacity currently is at 30 max. I believe it might go to 50 at some point, but currently the guild capacity is fucking tiny. 30 is just not enough. Friends list cap, 50 max. Like, come on. Why can I only have 50 friends? Dude, I have 200 in WoW and that's not enough. You can't manually form raid groups. That's just annoying as shit. I wish I could form raid groups for community events. Yeah, I can get people to all come to the same chat in the same place and do stuff together, but I would like to be able to do a raid group for certain things. There is no DPS meter. It really needs a DPS meter. I hate not knowing why I make a group and the boss isn't dying. I want to know who's the fucking baddie who's not doing any damn. So add a DPS meter. Lost Ark has no shortage of endgame. There is actually 4 different progression systems in this game. So you have PvE, PvP, life skills, and islands and exploration. So let's start off with PvE. Probably the coolest system, in my opinion, would be the Guardian system. This is an instance boss battle. It's 1 to 4 player. You go in and you have like 3 health potions and you have 3 lives. So if you or your buddies die a total of 3 times, the 4th guy to die will instantly end the encounter and everyone just dies immediately and you lose. You get no loot. You also have a timer of 20 minutes to kill the boss, and the boss is not easy to find. Basically, you got to run around the map, try find him, and you engage the boss. You have to avoid all the mechanics. If you get hit by basically 2 mechanics, you're dead. So you have to constantly avoid the mechanics. He's going to intermittently run away, and you have to kind of navigate around, split up, find the boss, and then converge and try and kill it again. If you do manage to kill the boss, he's going to drop accessories, sometimes, basically never, and materials. You can use these materials to create the tier raid gear, which is very competitive gear. There's also these things you can do called Chaos Dungeons, which you can do 4 times a day, which will drop loot based on your eye level. And the higher eye level you can get, the more dungeons you can do. Also, there's a ticket dungeon, which is a daily dungeon, which consumes a ticket that you get from the Chaos Dungeons. And this ticket dungeon is kind of a random dungeon with a random affix, and you can only do it 1 time a day. And it's pretty difficult depending on the affixes you get. It doesn't drop loot, but it drops materials that you need to upgrade your gear. There's also a table in the main cities that have a few different things on them, one of which is the tower, which is actually really cool. Effectively, it's like a tower which goes up and up and up and up. I assume it ends at some point, but it's another progression system where as you go higher in the tower, you'll keep unlocking different rewards. Some of the rewards are kind of pathetic, like you get health potions or something. Other rewards literally upgrade your ultimate ability or give you extra permanent stat points or skill points. And you've just got to progress your way up this tower, and it gets significantly harder the higher you go. And it's not just like procedurally generated like bullshit, right? It's not like doing trial rifts. It's custom floors with different challenges. Some of the challenges literally are just like you have to avoid guys that are trying to explode on you, or you have to figure out like a puzzle. You know, it's not just random bullshit. It's every single floor is programmed, and it's just scaled to be harder and harder and harder the higher you go. There's also a thing called a cube, which is kind of similar to a tower, but I would say not as good. The cube is like a 4-player version of the tower, but no, that one is just random. You get like, every time you go up a level, effectively you get a new role, which will either be a buff or a debuff. Sometimes you get ones that are like conduit pylons, other times you'll get things that will just like literally make you take 200% more damage. And the higher you go, the more money you get. This is one of the systems to farm money, and you can also get, like, the higher you go, you get, like, little boxes, which can be used for quests and things. There's also the rep system, so you can grind out rep with certain players or NPCs in-game, and they can give you rewards based on your rep with them. There is also world bosses, which are not a joke, by the way. They take, like, 10, 15 minutes, and the mechanics are just straight up can one-shot you. Depending on your eye level, you just won't even meet the enrage timer, and you'll just wipe. So you're going to kind of have a good group to go in and kill the world boss. These things are on a timer, and they're very, everyone will camp them. So they'll be like, oh, there's a boss spawning at this location 5 hours from now. And then, 30 minutes before it gets there, everyone kind of zones in, forms a big-ass group, and they get ready to go. There's also world events. These are things like Chaos Gates, where on another timer again, you can kind of like see this thing called a cascade spawn on the map, which is effectively an instance which spawns, and it's a 30-player one, which you go in and you fight various bosses, and then at the end you'll get like a bunch of loot, depending on how well you performed, which is also another way of farming materials and potentially like trinkets and different loot that you can actually use to upgrade your character. Now let's talk PvP. It's its own form of endgame, and you can progress through the system. Probably the main way to do it is instance PvP. At town, you can talk to an NPC, which will allow you to queue up 3 different modes. That is free for all, so that's 1v1v1v1v1v1. So 6 guys, and you just kill each other as much as possible. Whoever gets the most kills wins. There's also 3v3, which is like you and some mates, or you and some pugs go in, and you fight each other. Whoever kills each other the most, has the most kills at the end, so it's a deathmatch, wins. And then probably, in my opinion, the best mode and the most competitive mode is another form of 3v3, except it's only 1v1s. So when you go into the arena, you'll basically choose whether you want to go first, second, or third. You'll send your first guys in, and they'll fight each other. Whoever wins that battle will stay in, and he will not heal, he will not reset his cooldowns or anything. And now the second guy will come out and fight this guy and most likely kill him. Except he's going to be damaged now, and you can see it basically allows people to have these super clutch plays. And you might be like, that's boring, I have to sit down and watch. It's not. Because of the crazy interface. They have a really, really good spectator mode. So when you're spectating, you can see your partner's cooldowns, the enemy's cooldowns. You can see the GCDs they're using and the animations they're using on the right-hand side. You can see their health. You can see their immunity bars. It's a really, really good UI. And honestly, it's just pretty fucking pog. You can go in, you can brick it and just die instantly, and then one of your boys can go in and just annihilate their entire team by himself, or vice versa. Because, I do that all the time in PvP. What can I say, guys? A lot of the times I'll have some Spurg on my team, he goes in and dies, then I come in and carry the team to victory, which is really fucking sick. And on top of that, I feel like 1v1 combat in this game is significantly better than group combat because of the fact that, you're completely focused on what the other player's doing, and you're trying to react based on what they do. So when he dashes, you dash. When, he's using an ability, you use another ability to counter it. And it's like a lot more deliberate, I think. There's also island PvP, which is basically different islands around the world on different timers will have various rewards. Some of them will be rewards that allow you to respec your character. Other rewards will be like a shit ton of money. And this PvP is not instanced in the way that your character's not scaled. So whatever your gear is, if you've got shitty gear, you're going to get shit on. If you have big dick gear, you're going to shit on other players. Whereas the PvP instance system that I was talking about just before, your gear is normalized, so your gear doesn't really matter. It's all about skill. You also have a progression system where you kind of level up based on how much PvP you do. You get more points. It's kind of like a Paragon system, kind of similar to World of Warcraft. What do they call that shit? Where you just keep grinding and you keep just going up levels the more you play. Apparently, eventually, they are going to be adding a rating system in, but that is not in the game currently. Islands. This is another form of endgame. It sounds super weird, and a lot of people don't understand how the fuck it works. But basically, every single island out in the world has a heart. And you get the heart by doing various things. Some of them you turn into a chicken, and you have to fucking commit suicide and blow up a boss, and eventually he will drop a heart. And other islands, you do super long, boring resident sleeper quest chains. Some of the islands, you have to go around and just chill out with some chicks and hand out drinks to people in bikinis, and it's really easy. But basically, the more islands you collect, or the island hearts you collect, the more things you will unlock. The main thing being the island set, which is effectively a set of gear which you can then upgrade by going around and picking up loot from shipwrecks, just randomly from boxes and stuff when you're going around, from some of the island quests, treasure maps, which you can find, which is like a whole other little system where you find a map and then you kind of have to look at the map and figure out where the fuck it is, and then you kind of go to that exact spot. It's generally speaking in a really, really aid spot, which is like a storm, which is just destroying your boat, or there's sirens trying to kill you. Anyway, you got to go and find these spots and get the loot and then effectively upgrade the gear. There's also these things called Makoko seeds, which is an exploration in-game thing where you effectively just travel around and you're trying to find these little seeds. And the developers have deliberately placed them in really weird, awkward spots. You have to use all these little Easter egg kind of ways of getting there. Like some of them you just walk through off the map into a complete black area and just pick up some seeds. Other ones you have to play a song at a tree and it'll open up. Basically, people find these because they're an area that shouldn't exist. And you're like, why does this area even exist? And you're like, oh god, it's a Makoko seed area. And then people start playing their instruments and shit, and they eventually find out a way to get the Makoko seed. And yeah, it's a little bit of fun. And the rewards that you get from it range from potions and stuff and useless things to pirate ships and legendary earrings. So there's a reason to actually do them. Now let's talk about the final form of endgame, which is life skills. This has its own progression system where you can effectively level up a secondary level which is purely devoted to non-combat skills. These skills are herbing, woodcutting, mining, hunting, fishing, and archaeology. They all have their own talent trees which you can specialize into, and you unlock different active abilities. For example, if you go big dick in archaeology, you can eventually unlock a dog, which actually runs around and finds shit for you. If you go big dick in fishing, you can get fishing traps. You can set up proper traps, and you can use bait to lure fish in. If you go hardcore into mining, you can unlock explosives, which allow you to blow up certain things, which you wouldn't otherwise able to get into, and you get more minerals. And they all have these different specializations, and they're really hard to grind out. I was going to do one of the life skill sets because apparently it's one of the best ways to get gear. But people are saying, no, don't do that. It's a complete grind fiesta. If you want to farm out a full set, you are going to take years to unlock that shit. I didn't kind of go too hard into it, but I definitely really like the talent system, and I like the amount of depth they put into the gathering. It just makes World of Warcraft look so trash in comparison when it comes to gathering skills. Now let's talk about some of the things I was not a huge fan of when it came to endgame. Probably one of the biggest things would be eye level based gating. So basically in this game, If you do not reach a certain eye level, you just cannot enter an instance. Or if you can enter the instance, but you don't meet the suggested requirement, you'll just do 60% reduced damage, and it will be impossible for you to complete the task. This applies everywhere. If you try and go to a world boss and you do not meet the suggested requirement for that world boss, you just do straight up arbitrarily reduced damage. Which it just feels kind of crude, and I feel like they could have used a more subtle system. But, that's what they've chosen to go with. You are eye level gated everywhere. Chaos dungeons, guardians, world content. If you do not meet the eye level that they want you to be at, then you will not continue. Probably another big thing would be the fear of missing out systems. They have shit like where you have to log in every day, otherwise you won't get your reward. They have things, daily quests, that if you don't do them, then you're going to miss out on getting some very important materials that you need to upgrade your gear. The reason I don't like it, I guess, is it reminds me of mobile games. You log in and it pops up and you have to click some shit, and then you see like you've got all these things you need to do, kind of like trappings almost. It's kind of spooky. I feel like they could have just been a little bit more subtle. Even just making this video, I missed out on a single day of progression, and I kept thinking, I'm missing out on my loot. I'm missing out on my loot. I'm missing out on my... And it's just not a good feeling. But that's how they get you, boys. It's a way to addict you to the game. Another pretty big one, this is going to be controversial, but I'll say it anyway, is there's no catch-up mechanics. So if you want to re-roll, basically you got to start from square one again. Outside of your island hearts, your Makoko seeds, and your boats, gearing back up again, it's going to take ages, and, like I said before, everything's eye level gated. So there's no real way you can just catch up to your main, which I don't necessarily always agree with. I think, catch-up systems are kind of dumb because it defeats the purpose of wanting to grind, but I feel like there needs to be some sort of a system where, like, if your main's at this point, you should at least be able to kind of get here somehow via some sort of, system. And another thing that I don't like is the fact that in instance PvP, your gear is scaled and normalized. So in World of Warcraft, they tried this in Legion, where they force you all in the same gear, and there was no advantage for having sick loot. And in this game, it has the exact same thing, where it doesn't matter if you've got sick loot or not. Yeah, you can grind, different legendary items which give slightly different procs and things, and you can itemize your character stats a little bit and get some runes, but you don't have that feeling of, this guy's a fucking pleb who just at max level, and I've got a full fucking 6 set. Now I'm going to destroy him. No, that pleb, if he plays better than you, you're going to lose. And again, it's controversial, but I'm not a fan of that. I like the idea that, if you're the big neckbeard, you should shit on the pleb. In terms of soundtrack and audio, this game has a really good soundtrack. It was done by some guy called Brian Tyler, who did some shit for, like, the Marvel movies, and you can look at his biography, it's huge. Anyway, it sounds mint condish. They have dynamic music where it will change depending on what's happening, and then even to the point where you'll use one of your ultimate abilities, and it will completely mute all the sound, giving you this kind of, like, hyper-focused... kind of feel it's hard to describe, but it is sublime. Probably the one criticism I would have would be the audio and raid groups. If you're in a 30-man raid group and everyone's attacking a boss, it's just like... Last but not least, let's talk about the final category, which is the narrative or story. Obviously, I'm an autistic spurg, and I really don't care too much about this, so this is not a big deal to me. If I play a game for 10,000 hours, it's not because it had a good fucking story. Okay, I generally speaking will do the story once, and then from then on, I just skip it permanently. I guess it will add a little bit of depth to a game, but for me, it's just not a big deal. So obviously the game is in full-blown Korean, and I can only speak one word in Korean, and that is boys, which didn't really help me translate the story that well. But from what I could tell, I would say the story seemed kind of like an anime, or maybe an off-brand anime at that, because it was all over the place. and there was some weird parts, but there was some actually really good parts. I mean, to be honest, there was one part that it gave me goosebumps, but that was more like a combination, I think, of the music and then just the brutal visuals of just watching a bunch of children get murdered by a religious sect. But anyway, you're going to get to that part in the story. It's great. It's good, some good stuff. I talked to some Korean people about it, and they were all kind of like, meh. It was, nothing special sort of deal going on. And on top of that, and when I was doing dungeons and things, there was clearly people who had no idea what the fuck they were doing, and they'd never gone into this dungeon before. And it was a story dungeon, which there are 58, by the way. There's 58 story dungeons, just going from 1 to 50, okay? And they were just skipping the cutscenes, like, every time. I want to see the cutscenes. Apparently, Korean people don't give a fuck, so it obviously can't be that engaging. In conclusion, do I think this game is worth playing? The answer is pretty easy. Yes, it's clearly it's worth playing. It's free to play, and there's a shit ton of content. But do not be fooled into thinking that this game is perfect, because there is plenty of things wrong with it. Do I think it is going to be the new game that kills all MMOs and kills all ARPGs? Hell fucking no. Hell no. It's too different from ARPGs. This does not compete with Path of Exile in the ARPG front because it's an MMO. Like, it's primarily an MMO. It's not the same as Path of Exile. It's not got seasons. It's not got leagues. It's all about leveling a character up, progressing your character, and just slowly gearing him out over, weeks and months. So it's not an ARPG, nor is it an over-the-shoulder MMO. It's an isometric MMO, which a lot of people are not going to be a fan of. You kind of have to like ARPGs. What I think this game is going to do is it's going to dominate a niche. It is going to be the best isometric MMO ARPG. And assuming they can get this game over to the West in a reasonable amount of time, I think it is going to do very well because of that fact that it is just going to dominate this niche. It's a highly polished game. It plays really well. And it's fucking free. Fingers crossed, boys. Fingers crossed. The 2019 dream. Just want to give a special shout out to the boys who actually made it to the end of the video. There's probably like 1% of you guys, honestly. And if you made it this far in the video, you probably already are subscribed. And you probably already follow my stream. And you probably follow my Twitter. So there's no point plugging it, So, just fucking love you guys, eh? Fucking, you're a bunch of good lads, you know that? Bunch of really good lads. Till next time. Peace.